G'day and welcome to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. Today we're reviewing round 14, the second last buy round, talking about trade-out targets. We're hitting the chopping block, we're hitting the trade-in targets, and answering your questions. Let's go!
Just done it from nowhere. Fighting the goal from inside the 10. Shade from the boundary. Dusty. Petty. Petrarca. Oh, wow. How good is that? The legend becomes immortal.
G'day and welcome again to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. I am your host, Mitch Casey, and you can find me on Twitter at Ball Boys Fantasy. Joined once again by my co-host and good friend, Luke Rojo. How are you, mate?
Good, mate. Good. It's a late night recording on a Sunday night tonight. Sorry, I'm busy this week, so I can't get in. It's not necessarily ideal in terms of like getting all the most relevant news out to people, but at least we get a video done.
We're hot off the press.
We're
hot off the press. We can get this out early to the people, so people have all week to sort of think of their trades. And obviously, it's still got Thursday night footy, so got to be thinking a little bit quicker than we have gotten used to when Thursday night was not the case. But
thinking quickly is not my forte, mate.
Well, you still have a few days to digest it all.
You know what I was actually thinking about before? I've got a little bit of a bone to pick with you, actually, because I've started just moving around the house and just doing sort of mundane tasks, but then going, let's go at the end. So like Brooke bought chocolate in the shopping this week and I opened the fridge, saw the chocolate and went, let's go.
Hey, it's catching on.
Just stupid little shit around the house and I'm let's going. So you're in my psyche, mate. I don't know what's going on.
I wonder if I'm in anyone else's psyche out there. Give us a let's go in the comment section if that enters your thought process at any point during the day, or if you think that we're just weird, let us know that as well. But let's go into this first segment.
And the winner of the Norm Smith Medal.
You're an embarrassment to what you do, mate. You're an embarrassment.
Yeah, so not too many embarrassments this weekend because obviously we've got fewer games, but let's smash out through these bogs and flogs. Going back to Thursday, Port Adelaide versus Geelong. Hard to really pick a bog in this game, to be honest, but I've picked out Connor Rozee as the best on ground for the only real fantasy relevant player that kind of didn't suck on the weekend, and he's highly owned, but underappreciated, I think, for the most part. Connor Rozee is still averaging in the top 6 forwards, so
yeah, we were just getting used to giving it to Butters when Port Adelaide played, weren't we?
Yeah, that's right. So his teammate Rozee stepped up this game, and obviously Butters did not. But who's the flog for this game?
The flog in this game, well, we had a week here where we had a lot of quality premiums out on their buy, and we're looking for players to step up, and a guy who didn't step up was Tommy Stewart. I think he ended up with mid-60s, and again, he's pretty highly owned, which is there's sort of safety in that, but we'd like him to be doing a little bit better than that, I think.
Yeah, his worst score outside of his injured score in round 1, where obviously he put up 14 points and 12% time on ground, but 86% time on ground. No excuses this time, Tommy. No. 66, that's not good enough. People would have traded him in coming off his round 13 bye as well. So
yeah, that would have hurt. Zach Butters popped to 77, but I couldn't give him the flog after what he's done for us in the last little bit.
You're on notice, Zach, but you've earned yourself 1 week mulligan just because of your performance so far.
Mulligan?
Yeah.
Golf reference, mate.
Have I used that in the right way?
I think you have. That's a golf reference, isn't it?
I'm a big golfer, You saw me at Top Golf the other day. You can reference my golfing skills.
You were shithouse.
Extremely shithouse.
And I wasn't much better.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll move past
the
golf.
Mate.
Brisbane versus Sydney. I've bypassed a few of the obvious picks here, but I'm going to go the best on ground. Angus Sheldrick coming out for a lot of us for the first time. Some people brought him in the week before, but kicked 2 goals, scored a huge 82 points, and he's done this in less than 60% time on ground.
That's what's most impressive.
Yeah, so he has had the same amount of time on ground as Jack Buller did, who got subbed out for the Swans and scored 19 points. But he's done it, and he's gone out and kicked 2 goals, racked up the disposals and scored us 82. You can look at that 2 different ways. You can get nervous about his time on ground, or you can go, here's a gun, keep him in the side, and hopefully he's there next week. But Sheldrick did all he could with the time he was given.
That's it. If he doesn't get selected, I'll really feel for the ball fella.
Yeah, there's something else going on there, I reckon. But yeah, 19 touches, 2 goals, 4 tackles, 2 marks. Just great performance from the young man.
Fair to say the ice cream melted there in that one as well, based on those stats you pulled up for Mr. Buller.
Not the best. Yeah,
That's
2
not ideal.
disposals he had.
A few people traded him in too, I reckon.
Yeah, hopefully he spent the 9K and got our boy.
Flog from this game for Brisbane-Sydney. I'll explain myself here, but I've given Josh Dunkley the flog. Now,
Yeah, I see where you're going with this one.
you think you can pick where I'm going? So he's gone to 113, which is definitely not floggish behaviour. But the reason I think some people will be a little bit dirty on Mr. Dunkley is that he's given you the score that you probably have to take as a VC. Yeah. And then a lot of people were either choosing to roll into Timmy T or Bont, who's just played an hour ago, and they've both gone 150.
Yeah. It's, look, I tweeted out, I think, on the night of, that I said, if I had the choice, I would take 130. And I stand by it.
Me too. I said the same thing.
Yeah.
So.
Obviously, with hindsight now, the choice was to go for those big boys who were 1 and 2 on the big boys.
Yep.
But, yeah. And look, the funny thing was, I think in the last 10 seconds of the game, he had a tackle holding the ball, 3-4, and then a kick.
Just to get him in
that
bracket.
+8 in there. So I think he was at 105, and then that, you probably might not have taken that.
Yeah.
And then 113, people start taking it. So if that was just a little bit too late.
And people ask you on Twitter, and I said to at least a couple of people, like, no, I would take that. And like you said, I stand by it. And like, let's flesh it out a little bit more. So you get a 113, and you've got the opportunity to take it or leave it. Well, let's say you leave it and your captain score, the person who you've got as captain scores a 120 or a 130, which would be a great captain score.
Absolutely.
What do you stand to gain? You stand to gain,
17,
30
10
points
to 17,
maybe, like when it's doubled.
Yeah.
But what you stand to lose if
you don't double it, because remember, you still have the player.
Double.
So it's only like 15 points.
You stand to make a reasonably small gain in most instances, but you stand to lose a lot. So the situation that happened on the weekend where you get a guy who goes 150, obviously that sucks because you've lost quite a few points.
You've lost 30 plus points, yeah.
The likelihood of that happened, you still... you're going with the odds by taking that 113, aren't you?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you're risking 113 to gain potentially 20 or 30 points. Even though it's, it's unlikely that someone's going to get injured on a 3 points like Callum Mills, but it is possible. And if that ever was to happen, you'd be absolutely killing yourself. But again, it doesn't, I'm sure it doesn't probably help the people that made that decision. But I do think in the long run, it is the right decision. And if it was me in that situation, I would have done that, and I would probably do it again. Yeah, but let's move on to the next game. GWS versus Fremantle, a flogging. I think a 70-point win for the Giants. Best on ground here. I've got Josh Kelly, who in his return has come out and top scored for the game. Kicked 3 goals, 120 points. Interestingly, though, not many CBAs like we were seeing earlier on in the year.
Was he back out on the wing?
Yeah, again, we weren't watching this game, but I think he must have been out on the wing, judging by his heat map, which is
very wingish.
Very much on the wing there. Still had the 4 CBAs, but fewer than Callum Ward, fewer than Finn Callahan, and obviously Tom Green and Cogs were in there the most. So a good score, but maybe something for us to monitor and not jump back on after his bye.
Now, Flog, like you said, we weren't watching this game, but we were watching the scores, and
we checked half-time.
Oh, mate, we were having a little circle jerk at half-time.
Yeah,
we were thinking, it was the Hayden Young show. 68, wasn't it?
Yep, 68 at half-time. Leading all scorers, I believe.
68 points at half-time. And what did he finish on, Mitch?
79.
79
Yeah,
points.
come on, Hayden Young.
He's had, an 11-point second half after a 68-point first half.
Terrible. He's had, in the second half, 3 touches after going for 17 in the first half.
And he went in for 4 CBAs in the last quarter. Yeah,
he had centre bounces in the last quarter.
So he was around it.
Moving him around. I don't know what he's doing, but...
That kills me. And then we'll talk about this in a little bit more later, but in the Content Creators Cup, I've at this stage have had a draw in the Content Creators Cup. We'll talk more about that in a bit.
So if Hayden Young had just done anything but the very bare minimum.
12 points in the second half, maybe.
Come on, man. Hayden Young, just when we were coming around and other people have jumped on him too.
Oh, don't.
Hopefully that's a lesson learned for all you people out there. But
floggish behaviour.
Hayden Young. All right, Richmond versus St Kilda. Now, here's where I'll get a little bit of a head wobble out. Get back on my high horse. But again, we've given to this guy week in, week out.
Yeah.
But Timmy Taranto still deserves our respect. 147, had that massive second half. I think he went 95 points in the second half to get it to that 147 score.
Without a mark.
Without a single mark in the game.
That's nuts.
Yeah, that's actually an incredible stat line. 10 tackles, kicked the goal, 38 touches, just the best soccer player in the AFL at the moment because this man loves to kick it off the grass.
I reckon we should hit up Popowski on Twitter and
who's got the most soccers?
Yeah, so it'd have to be him.
Yeah, he loves to kick it off and get that extra point instead of picking it up.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, equally, as much as we were loving watching Timmy T in that game, if you were a Steel owner, what are you doing at this point? You throwing your hands up and going... We're going to talk about him
when we go to the chopping block later, but
just in terms of your mindset, you're thinking, like, I own this guy who not long ago has shown us that he's an absolute fantasy beast, and now it's just this roller coaster of is he injured, is he not injured?
Yep.
So, like you said, we'll talk about him more later, but yeah, if you're a Steel owner, I feel for you in that game.
Before we move on, but I think this is a lesson now. It sucks for those that might have jumped on him before the bye and before he had that knock. I think it was the Adelaide game where he sat off the fourth quarter and had ice on his knee or something like that. But because some people would have jumped on sooner than that. But if you were jumping on after his bye round, where there was clearly some question marks about his health, I think we can use this as a lesson to say, okay, it is always still worthwhile, as good as the player is, to have a week to look.
Yeah,
especially when it's an ongoing. And there's a bit of uncertainty as to what the injury actually is.
And through that period, his break-even has remained pretty high as well.
Yeah.
So it's not like there's been a pressing financial reason to jump on him either.
I realise that a guy we're going to talk about later, I might go against that rule. But,
okay.
Yeah, I think...
I'll keep you accountable, mate.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it turns out. But let's move on to the next game. So it's the Sunday games, Carlton versus Gold Coast. Best on ground, Sam Doherty, I'm giving it to here, who just did enough to keep himself expensive. He had a high break even. He nearly reached it with his 124. And just looks the goods still at the moment and is still pretty much in my eyes a lock for that top 3 defender position for him on the back half of the season. So definitely a target for us post-bye.
Now, Flog, we were watching this one, and Flog behaviour from this one goes to Stewie Jew, because when you have a gun young player and a gun young contested player like Fergie, you got to get him in the middle, don't you?
Fergie?
My humps.
Oh, okay, right. I see where you are. I see. The humper. Yeah.
The humper.
He needs to. Yeah, he needs to be in the
zero
CBAs.
CBAs, I believe, and he showed in the way that he played from the forward line why he should be in the CBAs.
Yeah,
he was a tackling beast. He just gets in and amongst it. They got absolutely pumped at the centre bounces.
Two CBAs for the game. Yeah, so effectively 0.
Yeah, Stewie Jew, get
You got players like Will Powell, Davies going in there. What are we doing with those blokes running through the middle when you've got...
Get Fergie in there.
He's the future of that club too.
Fergie's a stretch, hey? I'm really stretching it.
I like it. Let's
run with it.
Let's get Fergie in there. Although I think we had Fergus Green, but he's long gone now.
Irrelevant.
He's long gone. So
we can steal your nickname if you're not
get him
relevant.
in there because he's obviously a good contested player, and when you can tackle like that, even when you're playing forward, you deserve to be in the CBAs.
Now, next game, your head's about to wobble off your neck, I reckon.
The Bont, highest scorer for the round. Unfortunately, he was only number 2 for the Ball Boys Big Boys.
So what did your top 2 Big Boys average this week?
Over 150.
153-ish.
So, 153-ish. Look, it's a bit of luck. Look, I won't take all the credit. And I wasn't the only one who said that. I'm pretty sure that consensus out there for all the captain's pickers was the Bont and Timmy Taranto were the top 2. And look, Timmy Taranto, I can't claim that I was I found this gem out of nowhere.
He's a real roughie, mate. You know how to pick a roughie.
Oh, mate, yeah. Where'd you pluck that one out of, Mitch? The number 1 ranked player. But obviously the Bont went big. We were a little bit worried about the tag. Greenwood, again, kind of stood next to him at stoppages a little bit, but
Shield?
Shield went with McRae for most of the game. So Bont just sort of did what he wanted. And just a huge second half, last quarter. I think he went 60 plus in that final quarter as well. So the Bont did his thing, and he's been a great pick for us since the start of the season.
Yeah, no, for sure. Now, floggish behaviour from this game came from Jack Zeeble, and it wasn't anything to do with his first half. His first half was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
It was more to do with that second half, and we found some interesting stats as well. In the third and fourth quarters, he really only played 50% game time. So
so
that
very, very strange.
Yeah, for
from
people
Ziegel.
who held him, I think they'll be a little bit PO'd because they're going to have to either move him on or hold him through his bye next week, and he hasn't really given you a good score. So
Yeah,
not
so he
happy.
in the last quarter had 40% time on ground, no points in that third quarter,
Yeah.
and in the fourth quarter another 60% time on ground, and only had about 11 points there, I think. Just really disappeared after half time, which was really weird. I'm not sure if they were maybe nursing him to get to the bye because he's an older player, but might make the decision of trading him out if you have him already. A little bit easier come the round 15 bye.
Absolutely.
All right, let's move on to discuss the Content Creators Cup brought to you by Infinite Wealth. On the screen there on YouTube, there's a link that you guys can go to get a free copy of Tim Guess's or Infinite Wealth's Fast Track to Financial Freedom, which is an awesome program which I'm currently in the midst of doing right now, that normally costs a bunch of money that he has kindly given to us fantasy coaches for free. So head over to the link on the screen there, infinitewealth.com.au/AFL Fantasy to check that one out. But yeah, like you said before, it's a couple of really close matchups for both of us. You had the great man Tim Guest as an opponent this week.
I did, and
how'd you go?
we're in a little Twitter group chat with Guesty and Bales, and there was a bit going back and forth, and Bales was crunching the numbers, and I think all that Wardlaw had to do in that last game was get to 37.
Yeah,
That was all he had to do.
Outscore Matty Johnson.
He had to
think was
get
the
to
target.
37 for Guesty would have then got up by 3, I think it was.
Yep.
And he couldn't do that, and so we've actually tied. I think I'm just checking now because lockout has lifted.
Yeah,
so,
it has lifted. It looks like you might have
Oh,
tied.
we've got the draw there. So,
Which, if I'm not mistaken, puts me as the undisputed leader of the Content Creators Cup, as I had another big win, one that I didn't think I was going to get, actually. I messaged the group before. I said, look, I need Tim English to go 46 points in the last quarter. Possible, but didn't think it was likely. And then the big man comes out 55 points in the final term and gets me a 10-point victory over... who was I playing again? I've lost my... Who was I playing?
Dunkley's Donuts, Jake, wasn't it?
Yes, Dunkley's Donuts from the Hat Chat boys over there. So, nearly had me, but still managed to break through. So that's 5 on the trot for Mitch in the Content Creators Cup.
I'm fucking 4th last in the head-to-head, but like...
You've had some rough matchups.
9th overall or something like that.
Yeah, the
It's
percentage
fucking killing me.
is doing you in. So hopefully a bit better luck in the second half of the season.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. But yeah, head over to infinitewealth.com.au/AFL Fantasy.
And we got some news from the weekend.
Yeah, let me wait. I've just forgotten which button I'm pushing. All right, some news for the weekend. We'll start with the first game. Jack Buller, obviously we mentioned before, was the tactical sub. So what does this mean for next week? Do you think I think he could potentially just be straight back out of the side.
Yeah, it's likely that he is. I think
Buddy Franklin, Isaac Heaney.
That's it, and we said it on the live show. I think Friday, being a key position player coming into an AFL side is not an easy thing to do. So
the hope is he's still there because they've got West Coast next week.
Yeah, so if he is, he could have a little bit of a party. But
maybe because they have West Coast, they hold out some of those older injured players out another week. That might be your wide hope.
I mean, it could be, but if I was a betting man, I wouldn't be putting the house on it.
Matthew Johnson also was subbed in this game. It came out later, I think he had a corked quad, so one for us to watch because he wasn't originally in my trade plans this week, but if he is someone who's dropped, he potentially is someone that we might be better off trading out, but it obviously has slowed his cash generation a lot. I'm just checking. He's got a 36 break even. So still low, and if he plays a full game, he can easily get there. Yeah. So I think if he's named, you run him out there because we need the numbers in round 15. But definitely a watch in case you are, riding that line of 18, 19 players come this round, that if you're expecting him to be a green dot, potential that he's not there because of that corked quad and the fact that he obviously got subbed out. It is just something to monitor being a younger player.
Corkies can be an interesting one as well.
They can,
They can seize up through the week. So
they play on Saturday, so he's got the 7-day break. So hopefully that is enough for him to.
And we should get
up.
some good news. We should get some like team news on him being an earlier game.
For sure.
Nice.
All right, the next one here, Lockie Whitfield, which I just saw before we started recording, has been offered a 1-match suspension for his dangerous tackle. I can't remember who it was on. Again, we didn't watch this game, so I haven't seen much on Twitter about it. So perhaps it's one of those ones that's potentially challenge worthy.
Oh, I think he'll get a week. Okay. They may challenge it, but I don't think it's gonna. I've seen it a couple of times, and I just don't think it looks really.
The other thing that might complicate things that we saw with the Sicily news, and again, we're recording on Sunday, so we haven't got the news of his suspension, which is tomorrow night.
Yes.
That because GWS have their bye this week, could they elect to have the tribunal after the weekend of their bye, which obviously the Hawthorn did this week when they had their bye?
Yeah, but I think regardless, you probably, because he was on his bye anyway, you probably look to move him on and do something with him, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and he's probably not a lock as like a Sicily was in that defensive line. It might be an excuse to trade him.
So I think that's less
I feel like if he wasn't suspended, though, you weren't planning on trading Whitfield.
No, you weren't, but now that...
There's a question mark over him. It'd be interesting to see if that comes out and we'll know for certain, like say they challenge it if it's, before... Thursday night even, because some people might be making moves on that first night with, like a Melbourne playing. Yeah. And some relevant players in there. Very, very interesting, and interesting to see how the timing works out with that suspension for those who do have him. Because some people do have him. He was a trade option a few weeks back. And let's just go into this guy here.
Yeah.
Jack Steele. There's been some comments from the coach, I think it was, saying that he doesn't have a knee injury.
Why was his knee strapped then?
His knee's been strapped the last 2 weeks.
Precautionary.
He's battling some Achilles soreness, I think I saw as well. Just weird scenes going on down there at St Kilda.
He's fallen apart, it would seem.
The scoring obviously suggests that he's not 100% healthy.
It is...
so
I'm getting ahead of myself.
What's the go? Again, we were driving home from the Sunshine Coast and we were watching it on the phone and really just tracking Tim Taranto's scoring. So I wasn't watching Jack Steele super closely when I was watching this game. But
the problem is, like, Jack Steele's not a guy that you want to have to watch super closely. You just want him on the screen all the time.
Right.
And 2 years ago, he was, as far as I know, he was on the screen all the time. He was getting points. So
I did see a tweet from the great man Selby saying that he thought that he moved a lot better, but was just had a shocking game, which I don't know if that worries me more, but I don't know what I would do if I was a Steele owner.
Well, that's it. Let's put it this way: is you're not trading into him.
Yeah,
it's just a question of like,
are you trading him possibly out?
Well,
which is definitely a legitimate question. I can obviously see you've got a guy here who's averaged 70 points in the last, or like 75 points in the last.
What did his
couple
price
of rounds,
drop by
and
this
he's clearly
round?
not healthy. He's under 800k now. He's dropped another 33k.
That's insane.
It's a really, really tough question to answer. I wouldn't blame anyone if they wanted to trade him out if they were able to still do an upgrade and they still were able to get 18 on the field, 19 on the field, and Steele doesn't jeopardize that. Like, instead of you trading like Steele and you were trading a round 15 guy, if that made you have 19, if you already have 19, I think it's okay to trade him, in my opinion. Yeah. Because... I just don't think there's something not right there, and there's every chance that he's subbed, or it might even be answered for us come Thursday night, and he's managed for a week or something like that.
It could be, but you're ahead of the game because we're not talking chopping block yet. We're about to, hey? So let's get your sound effect queued up, mate, and then we can talk more about him.
Do it.
We elected not to put the headband on tonight.
We're going
straight chop.
Straight for the chop. So a couple of obvious ones first. So a few round 15 rookies, and there's actually not many round 15 rookies that I can think going through a lot of our teams. So the likes of Alex Chincotta, Dylan Williams, George Wardlaw. If you've held on to some other guys, who's the other? Bergman, I think is the other guy from North Melbourne. Any of those other guys, if they give you enough cash to move them out, this is the time to go. Some people were asking about George Wardlaw. I was always kind of the opinion that even if he wasn't done making cash, this was the sort of round to move him, because he's kind of that guy that will have a little bit of money on his head, and as good as he was up until this last game, he is still a rookie at the end of the day, and it is good to trade him out. His break even is now at 51, so it makes it feel like an easier decision to trade him out. So
yeah,
he
you're
is
trading him
in
out this
my
week.
plans to trade out.
It sucks that he didn't generate some more cash for you this week, but yeah,
He's like one of the only rookies that are on the round 15 bye for my team, and I think potentially for a few other teams out there, if you've already cut bait with the bread, that you can trade out and get an upgrade to someone who's already come off their bye.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think he is good to go. Round 15 mid prices again. Can't think of too many, but if you've got any mid prices in your team, I think if they're on the round 15 buy, get them up to a premium. So the likes of Finn Callahan, Lockie Ash are two guys that come to mind as well. I also think any other topped out rookies, again, be aware of your team and how many players are playing this round. But again, you're trying to get to 19, preferably 20 players, in my opinion. We saw this round, obviously, we had a couple of rookies that we were hoping were going to score 60s and 70s in Johnson and Wardlaw go sub 40. And if you had 20, those two scores dropped off. Or if you had the Buller as well, like if you got Buller, Wardlaw, and Johnson, if you had 21, they all don't count for you, and that's a blessing. Yeah. But if you had 19, you had to wear two of those scores. So if you can get to 19 or 20, your topped out rookies, even if they are playing, I think they can go. Players like potentially a Matty Johnson, potentially like a Darcy Wilmot, dare I even say the Humper can go as well if that's your ticket.
Just based on numbers, hey?
Yeah, just get the upgrade going. Let's talk about a few more questionable decisions. So Harry Sheezel. Now, a few people traded him out a couple of weeks ago.
Yep, myself included.
You were one of them. I held him for the last couple of weeks. Do you think that he is someone that we can look to trade despite him scoring a couple of 90s in back-to-back games now?
Yeah, I think he is. Look, his break-even's now down at 97, but your intention was probably always to trade him at this round. Like let's put it this way, he's still a rookie.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is hard to remember that. Like when players like Wardlaw, who we were saying were good rookies, come out and score 30s, he's not done that once this season.
And it's a little bit, you kind of start to fall in love with these kind of guys well a little bit. And you think, oh, how could I trade out Sheezel? He's been so good for me. But put it this way, rather than, trading your average rookie to an underpriced premium, you can trade Sheezel and get an absolute big dog in, someone like a Clayton Oliver this week, and we could talk more about him in a little bit. But I think for me, Sheezel is a guy that you might be looking to move on this week, depending on what you are looking to get in.
Let's put it this way, though. I think there is a slight difference with Sheezel. He is averaging 98 for the season.
Yep.
If I compare him to some other players that are in the defensive line, which is where he obviously is, who we are considering top 6 players.
Yep.
Jack Sinclair has averaged 97 so far this season. Tom Stewart has averaged 90. Now, he did have that injury game in round 1, but still.
What's
Zeeble, 97.
What's Sheezel averaged in his last 6? Because I don't think it'd be 98.
I can't give you the last 6, but last 5 he's averaging 90. Still pretty good.
But if you can get in a guy that's going to average 120...
I mean, yeah, and the fact that if you're trading him into someone, say, like a Sinclair, or, if it's in the forward line, someone like a Darcy Cameron or a Ben Keys, you are also getting that extra game.
Yeah.
So I think that is the other thing around it, that if you're going to trade someone off their round 15 buy, I think that he is one of the better ones to do so because, we've seen that he's had a couple of good games, but we do know that he is susceptible to them experimenting and changing his role a little bit. And as a first-year player, if he's not in this beautiful role that he has right now, he can fall off a cliff a little bit. So I agree with you. I just will put out the other mindset that people might be in. Who's the next guy on our list?
Talk to us about Jack Zeeble then, after what we saw. He's probably even higher priority to trade.
I think he probably is. He's 802,000. His break-even's back up to 130, so his price is going to keep going down. Look, after this week, it makes it easier to make that decision. I think he was more traded out by coaches a couple of weeks ago because of that high price and high break-even, but it's just the fact that he's 32 years old on a struggling side, not going anywhere. And again, I'm not sure if it was the intentional kind of resting in this last game, but 64% time on ground is a concern for a 32-year-old in a bottom 3 side. So
If you're looking to trade, let's just talk about Sheezel and Zeeble together. If you are looking to trade out one of those two guys, are you looking to you're obviously looking to get one upgrade, but are you looking to try and get a second, little upgrade with that? Do you feel good if your only upgrade is Sheezel to a premium this week?
That's a good question. No.
Do you know what I mean?
Don't think so.
Yeah, because then you're thinking...
Yeah. It depends on your team structure, right? I think if you're going to walk away in round 16 and you're still going to have a rookie or a mid-price on your team, then potentially holding that Sheasel or Zeeble is a better play for your squad if trading them stops you from getting out some of those worse rookies or mid-prices out of your side.
So the scenario where you trade Sheasel or Zeeble might be a scenario where you just can't generate enough cash to get a rookie to a premium?
Either that, or you can do that as like a little sideways move. So a move that I'm considering and some other people might consider is going a Sheasel down to a Darcy Cameron or a Ben Keys, who are still in the 600,000s, but you're probably going to argue that they're going to score average very similar at the worst, maybe even better. So and you're using that as part of a cash grab, plus you get an extra round, plus then that can help you make the other upgrade.
Yeah, I like that move. Yeah. And it's a little bit similar to what you kind of did with Goulden a few weeks back.
A little bit, yeah.
You're generating some cash by downgrading a guy that you think might be overs. And
yeah. So a guy that might be overs to a guy that's unders. And you get the extra week of the buys in this case as well. So
buy low, sell high, eh?
Buy low, sell high. So I think that's the play. But like I said, I think if you're not going to complete your side, and by complete I mean get to a player that's probably going to average 90, 95 plus in every line, then I think that if that stops you from doing that, he's probably better to hold in that instance.
Yep.
Because he's probably going to average 90 plus from here on out.
Yeah, nice. Nice.
All right, who is the next guy? We've got a few guys to go through. Well, we talked about Jack Steele a little bit before, but I think that you could trade if it still allows you to get 20 playing.
But I like the point that you made before. Like, if I think about the difference between a completed side by the end of the buys and maybe trading Jack Steele, I'd prefer to see Jack Steele's name there because I know that he could potentially give me a 110, 120.
This is the hardest question of the week, I think.
So
I just don't know how right he is.
How much does his value stand to dive more? Like, what's his break even now?
That's a good question.
Because
do a quick search.
Could he fit into this same category as like Sheasel now?
129.
So could he fit into that category with Sheasel where you take him down to a Keys and then you still get an upgrade on the other end with your last two trades?
Maybe.
And, I mean, I don't... So hard. I was going to say, does Keys average the same as Steele for the rest of the year? That's a crazy thing to be even considering, but right at the moment, it's not even out of the realms of possibility.
Well, at the moment, like Keys outscores him. It's just how hurt is he, and how long is it going to take for that to come good? Like we saw Brayshaw earlier in the year be a guy that was obviously hampered a little bit by an injury, and he came good. Like obviously he got over it eventually, and he never missed a week. So it's still going to do the same kind of thing where he just kind of fights through it, and eventually it just heals itself and he comes good. It looks worse to me than like a Brayshaw thing. There was talk of like a PCL injury, I think, at one point, which I'm pretty sure got reported. So that's why he doesn't have a knee injury quote from the coach really confuses me. And the scores are obviously reflecting it. He's obviously not moving as well as we've seen him move in the past. He's not scoring as well as we've seen him in the past.
He's only gone 100 twice in his last 8 games.
Yeah, it's bad. It's really, really bad, and I wouldn't blame anyone for trading him out.
Yeah.
It's going to be very team dependent and what else you could do instead.
Yeah.
So I think there's arguments for both sides.
So would you tick off Steele to Keys this week?
If you get an upgrade as well,
yeah.
Obviously, that's going to make you money. So if you can get a rookie up to another premium on the other end, I think I would. And the other asterisk there is if you can still get at least 19 quality players or 20 players in total, then I tick it off. If you're cutting it short 18, 19, I'd probably hold. Would be the only caveat there as well.
Okay.
A couple other players who have been disappointing who also have their bye. Sam Walsh. He is
he went well today, didn't he?
No, I think he had
really?
He had a lot of touches, but he did
82.
not score very well. So
82
he is
from 29 touches.
Plummeting down in price, 828,000, break even of 133, and has not turned up in his last 3 games, only once in his last 5. And
when he came back, he was looking like a must-have guy.
He was, yeah.
That's nuts.
It's been a weird kind of fall from grace after his hot start.
I don't think you're trading, but...
No, I don't think so either. I think he's going to be the kind of guy that after the buy rounds, us non-owners are going to be looking at him potentially as a cheap option that could, push that top 8. So, again, potentially if it's your way to get the numbers on the park, but I'd probably rather trade like a Sheasel first.
Yeah, I don't think
than a Walsh. Definitely a Zeeble over him. and just hope that things come good because we know he can, put big scores on your head. He did have the CBAs back up again this week when they were down a few weeks before.
Talk to us about Basilenka.
Bailey Smith, similar kind of story, just been disappointing. Doesn't seem to be in and around that top 6 mark. Had 78 against the Kangaroos where you would have thought he would go big. I don't believe he was getting tagged. In fact, I think a few other guys were getting attention and he was free to roam. So what's he priced at? 775,000. Like, are you trading him before you're trading a Sheasel?
Trading him before you trade Sheasel, yes.
Yeah, I think you are too, actually.
Yeah, I think you are because they're similarly priced now, and
he's got a little bit more money on his head, but he's actually averaging less.
Yeah, I have more confidence that Sheasel can ton up any given week.
And his role is worse.
Can you think back to the preseason?
We were the biggest Bailey Smith, we were fans, hey.
Fans, probably fans.
Glad we got off that ship. But yeah, that's been very disappointing from him this year. We'll be spruiking him next season, don't worry.
Oh, yeah. Old habits die hard.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the players that we're going to be trading in now. We've got a whole new batch to talk about with the round 14 buys coming off now. So we'll start in defence, talk about a fresh new players to trade in that have had their buy. Jordan Dawson and Nick Dacos highlight these two.
Yep.
Who would you say you didn't have either?
Dawson.
Would you go Dawson over Nick Dacos?
I think he's a lot more expensive at the moment, isn't he?
Dawson is.
Yeah, Dacos has dropped under 900, I think.
60K more, I want to say. Yeah.
Yeah. But
so I think Dacos, I think the other thing is Dacos is probably going to get tagged by Keys when they verse Adelaide this next round. So I think in terms of that instant reward, you go Dawson.
Do you think Keys will tag him across half forward?
I think so.
You thinking about trading Keys in?
Yeah, I am. Well, last time he tagged him, and then they moved Dacos into the midfield.
I think I'm
break the tag.
I'm Dawson regardless of that.
I think Dawson averages more as well.
Yeah.
I think he's just more matchup proof. If that makes sense.
Yeah. If you don't have Dawson, I'd be looking at getting Dawson. I think
they're both obviously big trade targets, and I've also just kept Jack Sinclair in there because I think of those guys that are coming off their buys, they're to me the clear ones in the top 6. You could talk about Stewart being in that group as well, but if you don't have Stewart, I think you'd rather go Sinclair and let Stewart's price just drop a little bit more.
Yeah.
And Stewart has another decent matchup in the Brisbane Lions.
And a pretty high break even now, I'd imagine.
Yeah, so I think, I'd go Sinclair over a Stewart. Again, I'm trying not to recommend some of these mid-price kind of options like an Isaiah Wanganeen Millera and,
we discussed
there's a few other guys. Actually, the Melbourne guy, who am I thinking of that we were talking about? Salem. Yeah, what are your thoughts on him as an option?
Well, for the same reason that you're about to say, it's go to the top from here. And we talked about this on Friday, and I know this is only my second year playing, but it's everything that I've heard in other podcasts. It's everything I've listened to you say. It's like this time of the year, you're looking to lock away a guy that you can just sit comfortably on your field knowing he's top 6, top 8 in his line.
Yeah.
And neither of those guys give me that confidence.
Elliot Yeo?
No.
Nah, same deal. I think I agree with you. I think there is scenarios where, if you're really strapped for cash and you're in desperate situations and you've got injuries or whatever, there is an argument that those guys could come into calculation. Well, if it's maybe you get a double upgrade, if you're just trying to get these rookies off the field, you can get to 2 of these guys. Yeah, that could potentially be a play.
Well, can I give you another scenario? Because I'm having a look at my team thinking, I think I'll get an upgrade that I like this week.
Yep.
But then next week, based on the rookies that I might have to trade out, I don't know if I'll generate enough cash to go all the way up. So is that a scenario where I could find a halfway house in someone?
I think that's more the play as well, because it's easier now this coming week to make the big upgrade because you've got 3 trades.
Yeah.
Whereas the following week, we're going to go back down to 2 trades. So those jumps are going to be harder to make again. So if you can get to the bigger dog now, I would tick that off because it's going to become more difficult to do that later on when we're back to 2 trades. So I think the buy rounds are a good time to go up because of that fact. Now, if someone's value and they're, one of the top lines, you still go that way.
Yep.
But I think when you can, get the big dog in, especially if they're, got a good run and those other boxes are ticked.
Now, speaking of big dogs, who are you looking at in the midfield this week in terms of upgrades?
So we got a plethora of options
Plethora?
Now. Yeah, heaps of
Good
options.
use of the word, mate.
Yeah, so some of these guys might obviously be highly owned already, but again, you might be missing one or a few of these guys from your team. So My number one target, I think, from most teams is Rory Laird. He
Yeah.
is probably going to be at the top, near the top of the tree in terms of averaging
Cuddle
players
weather.
from now on. And I think he is still actually a little bit of value. So he's 948,000, and when you compare him to some of the other top mids, that is actually a decent price to pay. So price at 112, I think he could easily outperform that. So he's my number one. We were watching Brad Crouch in the car ride home, and he got off to a flyer, but did slow down. What did his game look like, or his scoring look like to you? And do you think...
I was fucking driving the car, mate. What did his scoring look like? I didn't see it.
Yeah, so is he someone that you... Because you were talking about maybe he's a guy that you go to.
Well, when I saw that he'd gone 60 points before half-time, I was thinking,
he did
well...
go big. So he went 46 in the first quarter, then 14, 30, and 19. So scoring went a bit up and down as the game went on. But,
yeah. If I can't find my way to maybe look at Oliver this week, then I think a guy like Crouch or maybe a guy like Anderson might be guys that I have a little bit of a look at. But I haven't, I know lockout's lifted, but I haven't had a bit of a chance to play around with those upgrades and downgrades yet.
I was Lockie Neal last week. Sorry, I was Lockie Neal
the week before.
I was Brad Crouch last week, and now I'm back onto Lockie Neal being the preferred option because the run that Brisbane Lions have now,
Is it juicy?
they go Richmond... so St Kilda, Richmond, West Coast, 3 games in a row. So
it's awesome.
All great runs. So this is kind of like the Essendon run from a few weeks back.
Yeah.
The Lions have that now. So I do think that Lockie Neal, even though a lot of people would have traded him in the last couple of weeks, if you haven't, it is a good time to get back on now because if you don't, he might put some points on you. Let's go to a few other round 14 guys. Let's talk about the Melbourne Demons players.
Okay.
Christian Petrarca and Clayton Oliver. I think Oliver's probably the bigger.
He's the one that needs
point
discussion,
here.
doesn't he?
Yeah, so he's been in my plans. Now
Has he?
He has.
I hadn't heard.
Yeah, I told you. Try to keep this a little hush hush, but you outed me. But I think that despite him coming off the injury, he's just going to be the guy that we're all going to have because he started the season amazing. Outside of Taranto, he's the highest averaging player. Tim Taranto and Tim English.
Yeah.
He's the third highest scoring player in the comp. And
well, the question is,
can you jump on after
an injury?
Yeah.
Like, why not wait a week? Well, his break even's 130, I think, 129, something
127,
like that.
yeah.
So
he's 990. He's not cheap.
He's not cheap at all.
He's nearly $1 million.
I was going to say he's not going to get away from you, but he's already away from you.
Yeah.
But like you said, is this the week to do it? And is that a good enough reason to do it this week if you can?
So the
he's
enticing thing is, right, no one has him.
Yeah.
Nobody has him. He's 0% owned. I think in the top 1,000, I'd probably say in the top 10,000.
Yeah.
Because he's obviously missed the last 4 rounds.
Yeah.
So no one's got him. So he's a massive unique, and you want a guy like Clayton Oliver to be a unique player for you because he's 990, but he might stay at that elevated price for a little while.
So let me just look at it purely this way for you. You know you have to own him at some point during the season because we all assume he's going to be a top 8 mid.
Yeah, we want to get the best players in. Yeah.
So own him now.
Why not now?
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
You got 3 trades, own him now.
The risk, obviously, we talked about with Jack Steele.
Yeah.
You're coming back off an injury. How does he look? You haven't had eyes on it. I think it's a little bit different because it's a soft tissue injury, a hamstring, which we've seen so many times in the AFL. It's like the most common injury. Players usually come back onto it, and they usually come back pretty good. There is, I think, to get all EP on you, the first game back from an injury is the highest risk.
Yeah.
But the other thing as well, he was ready to come back a week before his bye, then had the blister, the infected blister, and went to hospital. So
those blisters hurt.
Yeah, I mean, the blister's it's one thing, and he was in hospital, which is obviously never a good sign. But in terms of the hamstring, which was the original injury, to give yourself another 2 weeks off after that as well, it's got to be good signs.
He hasn't had a history of hamstrings, has he?
I don't think so. I think he's been very durable across his career so far, which, touch wood, it doesn't really mean too much once you've now had the hamstring injury.
And you think about how valuable he is to that team.
Yeah.
The medical staff down there at the Demons wouldn't be taking any risks with him, would they? So
he also, the other another flag, he comes up against Geelong in Geelong, which is a tough matchup for midfielders. But it is Clayton Oliver. Like he's a gun.
What if you plan your next 2 weeks to get him next week? So I know you only have 2 trades next week. What if
you're probably going to need to bank a bunch of cash to do that.
Yeah, so would you say to somebody that is a valid play if you can get an upgrade but bank a little bit of cash knowing that you're going to get Clayton Oliver next week?
I would, because, look, his next 2 games, Geelong and GWS, are tough in terms of fantasy scoring, but then he goes up against the Saints, Brisbane, Adelaide, Richmond, North Melbourne, so a good run there.
Yeah.
And he also has Hawthorn in the second last round. So he's got a good run after these next 2 games. So I don't think it will kill you for missing him these next 2 weeks. It just might, if you can get him now, it might save you the headache of trying to get him in later when you've got 2 trades to do so.
Yeah. I think from what you've said...
But there's a bit of risk reward there. Yeah.
Especially a bit, like you said, being unique. And if he comes out and just does his thing, he could be very good unique. Yeah, my thinking based on what you've said there is like, you have to own him. So why not own him either this week or next week? Either do it this week, 3 trades, or set yourself up to do it next week.
Yeah. I think if I didn't have a Rory Laird, a Brayshaw, potentially a Neil with his run, I'd probably go there first because I see them, well, except for Neil. So Brayshaw and Laird as locked in top 8 guys.
Yeah.
And they're cheaper. Yeah. And they're not coming off an injury, so you've got a bit more confidence in their body. I'd probably go there first.
Yeah.
I might have him above Merritt because Merritt's also very expensive, and I have less confidence in him being like continue doing what he's doing. Like he's probably more of a like tags affect him more.
Yeah.
Parrish is coming back into that midfield.
Yeah.
Few more unknowns. So I'd probably rank him like 4th in terms of my targets, in terms of those big expensive midfielders. Or sorry, 3rd in terms of those big expensive mids.
What about his Demons counterpart? What about Christian Petrarca?
Well, he's a guy that hasn't got a lot of love this season, and he's gone about it pretty well. 106 average, so it's about what we'd expect. I think he is in the top 8 at the moment.
Yeah.
And again, has that same run that Clayton Oliver has, so a couple of tough matchups, but then it opens up after that. Is he a guy that could be a good point of difference for you coming down the stretch of the season?
Well, if a guy's going to be a top 8 mid, it's like, and he's a point of difference, that's what you need. Do you know what I mean?
Under 900k, so he feels other guys he's a bit cheaper.
For me, he feels like the guy that I might chase after I feel like I've ticked all the certain boxes.
Yeah.
So I've ticked all the I've ticked off Clayton Oliver,
and you're just dealing with that like bottom end of the blanket that we can throw over.
And then it might be that guy that I go for Christian Petrarca. Like I wouldn't feel good about trading him in this week if I still had Brayshaw, Laird,
some of those other big guys
Oliver
to get
on the table.
Yeah.
But he's a guy with a ceiling as well. He can beat up on teams well below him on the ladder. So there's every chance that we all need him in the team by the end of the season.
Yep. We'll keep making way through these round 14 mids. Zach Merritt is next on the list. He is probably someone that if you don't have him, I don't know if I'd be paying the nearly $1 million to get him into my side. 994,000. He's averaging 112, but obviously on the back of a huge run of form with those easy matchups.
Yeah.
I just think that compared to some of the other guys in that price tag, he's, in my opinion, the most overpriced.
For the reasons you mentioned before as well, I think you brought up the good thing about the being a little susceptible to the tag. They change his role when he gets tagged. Sometimes he goes forward.
In the last game,
In the last game, it was fortunate that he still scored when he went forward. But the fact that he is going to cost you more than Oliver at the moment is pretty wild. So I think that you could probably see that one for a few weeks, and you might actually get him cheaper a little bit later.
He's the most expensive midfielder in the game. He's only cheaper than Timmy Taranto. So I think if you don't have him, I'd be trying to shop elsewhere and hope that he comes down in price.
Yep.
And you can get him later. And then the last one here, which I put a little question mark next to his name, Tommy Mitchell, who obviously has put up a good run to go into his bye.
He's still salty.
I am still a little bit salty, but averaging 99 points for the season, priced a little bit more expensive than that, 875,000. Is there anything different of his last few games, or is it the fact that he's versed North, then West Coast, and then played Melbourne without a Jordan De Goey?
I don't think there's anything different. I mean, maybe without Jordan De Goey, maybe, but he was still getting high midfield minutes, I'm pretty sure.
I think the CBAs did go up, but again, that's going to be a short-term thing. How many more games does De Goey out for? I think, was he a 3-game suspension that he got, or more?
Yeah, 3, I think, in the end.
So I think he's got 2 more to serve there. So you're probably getting a short-term bump in his scoring. He's probably going to be maybe a 105, 110 guy these next couple of games, but then I think he goes back down to 95, 100.
Yeah, and even even if he does go on a great sort of stretch here and we do find out that we need him, we're not going to be paying a great deal extra. He's already pretty highly priced.
There's cheaper guys that you're probably going to average more. So
yeah,
I just threw his name in there because some people might gravitate towards the pig, but I probably wouldn't myself.
Now we go to the forwards now, and I reckon this next guy is a guy that I want to pick your brains about. Ben Keys. We talked about him a little bit before, but tell me more.
Yeah, Ben Keys, he's a tough one for me to get a gauge on. Now, the one thing I do really like about Ben Keys is his break-even is 36. Yep. So he's going to go up in price. The interesting thing, though, is that last time they played Collingwood, he did tag him. I think that was back in round 7, if I'm not mistaken.
Round 7, he scored 44 points tagging Dacos.
Oh, okay.
And the previous round against Hawthorn, he scored 35, which is less than his break-even.
Okay, so there's obvious risk associated with him and his role. I do think that he has gained a bit of confidence over these last couple of weeks going through the midfield, and the fact that he went in there when they played West Coast gives me a bit of confidence that he's not just in there only to tag.
Yeah.
But I think there could be potential pain this week against Collingwood, who are tough to score against anyway.
The temptation for them to tag after, it being, was it reasonably effective? I'll go back and check for you. But
they lost the game by one but
point,
obviously it was close, which at that time for Collingwood is a...
Dacos had 99, he had 27 touches. So it's effective. Doesn't feel super effective. But
I mean, he went at 56 disposal efficiencies,
which is low for him.
That is quite low for him. So,
and the fact that they were in the game probably gives them confidence maybe to go back to that tag.
Yeah, I think they will do it. It's just whether or not he can score better than the 44 he did last time. So,
do you think that?
But then he plays North the week after.
But then, is there a guarantee for him to go back just into that midfield role after he's tagged for a week, or do you think they go, okay, we're back to that now?
Yeah, it's a tough one. You can hide behind the break even if it's a play like I'm considering doing a Sheasel down to him as part of like another upgrade. But there is obviously risk associated with it. It's one that you can maybe hide behind the buys and use that risk reward play that he potentially might drop off. If you're lucky, if it goes to shit.
Well, let's say he gives you a 40. Are you then looking to trade him the next week? Is he then your guy that you upgrade from the next week?
Probably is. If you've got a completed team, if you've got all premiums on the park, which I don't know if many people will. I won't. I'll still need to make one more upgrade, so I might be doing that and giving him 1 week against North.
Yeah.
But then if he then follows it up again, then you'd pivot. So I think he's got a 2-week kind of opportunity in your fantasy squad if you trade him in this week.
He's got an expiry date.
He's got an expiry date to prove himself would be the way I'd treat it.
He could be the keys to your big move this week.
Oy, the big keys. We'll see. And the other one, again, forward ruck, Darcy Cameron, who I think a few people might have their eyes set on him. He is obviously underpriced, so I do actually really like him as a target for people who are a little bit cash starved. And again, if you want to maybe fix up some of those poor performing players and still get the upgrade, Darcy Cameron might be your guy.
Yeah,
he's been getting a lot of midfield run prior to his buy round as that main dude in the ruck for the Collingwood Magpies. So I think he's probably potentially, what's his price at? He's still in the 600s, isn't he?
691.
691. So he's potentially 10 to 15 points underpriced. I think he can at least be a 90-92 guy.
I didn't realise he was still similarly priced to Keys.
Yeah. The only difference is that his break-even is nowhere near as low, but it is still at 63. So
I think I'm actually probably, if you don't have either,
he's the safer play.
I actually think so, yeah. I think that might be where I go potentially.
Yeah, I think that will be the more popular move. Keys probably presents more of a risk. The break-even makes the potential cash is going to make more appealing from that point of view, but I think Darcy Cameron's the more secure role.
Yeah.
Plus, he is good cover for your ruck line if there ever was a late out or something like that, which is not as important with the rolling lockout, but still nice to have, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
And he comes up against Riley O'Brien, who I think is leaking decent points to ruckmans as well. So, yeah, I like me some Darcy Cameron as a good trade target.
Okay, is it time to answer some questions, or we got anything else to do?
No, well, let's have a look at some questions. I think last I looked at, there was a lot of the same topics that we discussed, but let's have a look here. So,
did you see, while you're finding it, did you happen to see the Hitler video on Twitter? Did you?
No. Oh, I think I got tagged in something like with the dubs, like the
Yeah.
dubbed over. Yeah.
I was scrubbing through it, and there's a bit in there that says something about me, and like, how can you trust that guy? He has sideburns or something.
You, as in,
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I thought,
yeah, have sideburns, do you?
well, that's what I mean. Like, there's a
Plus
lot of.
you're wearing headphones.
That's what I mean. Like, there's a lot of things wrong with me, but I didn't think I had sideburns. So I don't know.
Hey, that's creative, at least.
Yeah, I have to suss that one out. But I mean, any publicity's good publicity, right?
Was Hitler,
just like,
saying that you've got sideburns?
Oh, so, yeah, something like that. I don't know.
Well, if Hitler says it, it must be true.
I'll find it for you after the thing.
We didn't touch on this guy, but Noah Anderson. What are your thoughts on Noah Anderson as a target? I was pretty keen on him last week.
He for me falls into a similar category to Christian Petrarca. Like I said before, he's not for me in the priority of Brayshaw, Laird, Oliver eventually, these kind of guys. He sits in that tier just below where I feel like once I'm getting closer, he might be that last guy that I trade in to make the completed team. He or Petrarca or one of those guys that you think could be the 7th or 8th best midfielder.
He's now cheaper than Lockie Neal. So I'd probably still go Neal just because of the run they've got coming up. But Anderson would probably be the next guy that I get. I'd probably go Anderson over Petrarca, again, just because of matchups. He's got Hawthorn this week. So if you already have a Neal and you can't afford some of the big dogs, I do like Noah Anderson as probably one of the those mid-800s guys. I probably would take him over Crouch.
He goes Hawks, then he goes Collingwood and Port Adelaide.
Yeah.
And followed by the Saints. But yeah, I think
so
he
a couple of tough ones after this
he
one.
fits into that category. Your priorities are probably elsewhere for most people this week, but he could be a nice guy to round out your team.
He's a player that I really like, but I do think I agree with you that he's not, priority number one to get into your side.
Yep. Any other questions? We sort of addressed a lot of them.
We've addressed a lot of them. Who's the best defender off their bye this week? So probably between Dawson and Dacos.
Yeah.
Assuming you don't have any, who's your pick there?
Dawson, like I said before, I reckon. But yeah, if you have both of them, then you could still look at Sinclair. I think we mentioned. But yeah, Dawson over Dacos. I think he's going to average more for the rest of the season. And I was going to say tag risk, but I think Dawson plays in that inside role where the tag risk, he might be less susceptible to it. Dacos might get shut down off halfback, but really splitting hairs. But I go Dawson.
Yeah. I'll give you one more question because we've answered a lot of these during the podcast.
Okay.
So final verdict. If you have 20 or 21 playing this week, do you sacrifice a number and trade Steele, or should this person trade Sheasel instead? This is coming from Luke, by the way. So
you have 20 or 21?
Yeah, so you should have 20 to 21. So I think
sacrifice a number.
So I'm assuming Luke here, Luke that asked the question, that if you trade Steele, you might have 19 or 20.
Yeah.
Is the way I'm reading this.
If you hold it.
If you have 20, I say yes. If you have 19, I say no, because I do think it just feels good to have. But it is also depending on your team. Look at your team and look at the of those 20 players. Like, how many of those are like?
Are they shit?
Yeah, are they shit players? Like, are you relying on Kai Lohman or one of those like poor rookies to be on your field and counting, or do you have some decent premiums there to get you to a decent score even if you only have 18 or 19?
Yeah, I think I'm still leaning towards trading Sheasel in that scenario. Probably either way, to be honest. I think
you're sticking fat with Jack Steele
at least for another week, I guess. It's
complete your team, get the premiums on, and then fix him up later.
I kind of feel that way, but he is bleeding, isn't he? So bleeding cash.
I think it's definitely one to monitor over the week. We'll keep an eye out and ear out for the news on Twitter.
Yeah.
And if you have any news of yourself, if Team Awesome Sauce, shout out to Roy. If we can get some definitive word on what the hell is going on with Jack Steele. Does he have an injury? Is it Achilles? Is he just out of form? What's going on?
Maybe that shaved head that we were on about at the preseason wasn't good for him.
Yeah, grow the hair back, mate. Bring back those luscious locks. But that might do it for us today, guys. Make sure you guys, if you are watching on YouTube, give us a big thumbs up and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you do have a spare 60 seconds, go over to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star rating and review. And we'll see you guys next time on Friday for the live show to go through another exciting podcast. And the big boys coming back. Let's go. See you later.